A Millionaire's Redemption, the love that changed everything. Victor, a charming millionaire, seemed to have it all: luxury cars, sprawling estates, and a lifestyle that most people could only dream of. Yet beneath the glossy exterior of his life, he carried a nagging sense of emptiness that no amount of wealth could fill. One ordinary afternoon, a seemingly trivial incident changed everything. While parked outside a cafe, Victor's sleek luxury car was accidentally scratched by a wheelchair. He looked up, expecting an awkward apology or perhaps an argument. Instead, he met Livia, a spirited woman whose warmth and independence stood in stark contrast to his polished yet hollow world. Rather than lashing out, Victor found himself offering to fix her wheelchair, a gesture that surprised even him. Over coffee, Livia's candid humor and unique perspective on life captivated him. Unlike anyone he had met, she was utterly unimpressed by his wealth. For the first time in years, Victor felt challenged, intrigued, and alive. But how could a millionaire, defined by opulence, connect with someone like Livia, who lived a life grounded in simplicity and selflessness? Their story is one of love, redemption, and defying societal expectations. Stay tuned as we uncover the twists and turns of this extraordinary journey. The cafe sat at a quiet corner of the bustling city, its large windows glowing warmly under the late afternoon sun. Inside, the clinking of cups and the soft hum of conversation created a welcoming ambience. Outside, Victor, a tall, impeccably dressed man in his early 40s, leaned casually against his sleek black car. His tailored suit and polished shoes reflected his status as a millionaire, but his eyes held a restless, almost bored expression. Victor glanced at his watch, then at the passers-by on the street, searching for something, anything, to break the monotony. His life, filled with lavish parties, high-stakes business deals, and extravagant vacations, had become a routine. A dull ache of emptiness had crept into his days, though he rarely admitted it to himself. A sudden scraping noise snapped him out of his thoughts. He turned to see a woman in a wheelchair, her hand flying to her mouth in shock as she stared at the fresh scratch on his car door. "Oh no," the woman gasped. Her hair, tied back in a simple ponytail, swayed as she looked up at him with wide, apologetic eyes. "I didn't see it, my wheel caught the edge." Victor blinked, his irritation bubbling up, but before he could speak, she added, "I'm so sorry. I'll pay for the damage, somehow." The woman's sincerity disarmed him. Her tone wasn't defensive or dismissive, as he had expected, but genuine and concerned. Her wheelchair, slightly worn but sturdy, tilted slightly as she adjusted herself to face him more fully. "It's just a scratch," Victor said, his voice softer than he intended. "Still, I should have been more careful," she insisted, fidgeting with the edge of her sweater. Victor studied her for a moment. She was in her mid-30s, with sharp yet kind features. Her wheelchair's frame was scuffed, but its wheels moved smoothly. Something about her demeanor, calm, unpretentious, intrigued him. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. "Livia," she replied, her brow furrowing slightly in surprise. "Why?" "Livia, I'll make you a deal," Victor said, crouching slightly to meet her eye level. "Forget the car. Let me help fix your wheelchair instead." Livia blinked, then let out a short laugh. "You want to trade a car repair for a wheelchair repair? That's an odd bargain." Victor shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Call it even. You'll save me the trouble of dealing with my insurance." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment, searching for insincerity but finding none. Finally, she nodded. "All right, deal." A few minutes later, they found themselves sitting at a nearby cafe. Victor had ordered a black coffee, while Livia stirred a frothy cappuccino, her hands moving with practiced ease. "So," Livia began, glancing at Victor over the rim of her cup, "what's a guy like you doing out here, looking like he walked off a magazine cover?" Victor smirked. "I could ask the same. What's a woman like you doing, zipping around town and terrorizing innocent cars?" She chuckled, shaking her head. Touché. As the conversation unfolded, Victor found himself drawn to Livia's frankness. She spoke openly about her work as a volunteer at a non-profit for children with disabilities, her passion for art, and her disdain for superficial people. She didn't shy away from difficult topics, nor did she attempt to sugarcoat her experiences. "You don't seem like the type to waste time," Victor remarked. "Life's too short for that," Livia replied, her eyes softening. "When you've faced enough obstacles, you learn to focus on what really matters." Victor leaned back in his chair, her words hitting him harder than he expected. "And what matters to you?" "Connection. Purpose. Making a difference, even if it's small," Livia said simply. "What about you?" Victor hesitated, swirling the coffee in his cup. For once, the usual answers, business success, luxury, power, felt hollow. "I don't know," he admitted. Livia tilted her head, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "That's an honest answer. I didn't expect that from you." "What did you expect?" Victor asked, genuinely curious. "Something polished. Rehearsed. Like your suit," she teased with a grin. Victor laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh he hadn't heard from himself in a long time. "You're not like anyone I've ever met, Livia. And you're not as predictable as I thought," she replied, her tone teasing but kind. When they parted ways later that evening, Victor couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. As he watched Livia wheel herself down the sidewalk, her ponytail bouncing with every turn of her wheels, he felt a pang of something unfamiliar, admiration, maybe even envy. Back in his car, he glanced at his reflection in the rearview mirror. The man staring back at him looked the same as always, polished, confident, in control. But something was different. Livia's words echoed in his mind, challenging him in ways no one else ever had. For the first time in years, Victor felt a flicker of something more than fleeting satisfaction. It was curiosity, a yearning for something deeper, something real. And it all began with a scratched car door and a woman who refused to let life's challenges define her. As the city lights blurred past him on the drive home, Victor found himself smiling. Livia had left an impression, a crack in the armor of his meticulously crafted life. And he couldn't wait to see her again. Victor stood outside a modest community center, its colorful mural of children playing stretching across the brick walls. The chatter of kids echoed from the playground nearby, accompanied by the occasional scrape of basketball shoes on the court. He adjusted his tie, a reflex more than necessity, before stepping inside. The lobby smelled faintly of crayons and disinfectant. Posters promoting various workshops and charity events lined the walls. Victor, used to opulent boardrooms and high-rise offices, felt out of place in the cheerful chaos. "Victor?" Livia's voice called out, cutting through his uncertainty. She wheeled toward him from the far end of the hall, a clipboard balanced on her lap. Her ponytail swung as she approached, her smile lighting up the otherwise plain surroundings. "You found me," she said, parking her wheelchair beside him. "It wasn't too hard." "You're a celebrity around here," Victor replied, his tone playful. Livia rolled her eyes. "Celebrity might be a stretch. Did you need something, or are you just here to volunteer?" Victor smirked. "Maybe both." Livia raised an eyebrow but gestured for him to follow. "Come on. I was just about to help set up for story time." Victor watched as Livia worked with the children, her movements fluid and confident. She handed out crayons, adjusted bookshelves, and laughed at the kids' wild interpretations of the stories she read. Her wheelchair didn't seem like an obstacle, instead, it was just part of her presence, as natural as the sun streaming through the windows. One little boy with curly hair tugged at Victor's pant leg. "Are you here to help Miss Livia?" he asked, peering up with wide eyes. Victor crouched to the boy's level. "That's right. What do you think I should do?" The boy grinned, pointing at a stack of chairs. "You can move those. Miss Livia said she can't lift them." Victor glanced at Livia, who was watching with an amused expression. "Looks like I've got my orders," he said, rolling up his sleeves. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Victor convinced Livia to have dinner with him at a nearby cafe. They sat at a quiet corner table, the golden glow of the streetlights filtering through the windows. "I have to admit," Livia said, sipping her tea, "you're full of surprises." Victor smiled. "I could say the same about you. What you do at the center, it's impressive." "It's just what I care about," Livia replied, shrugging. "I know what it's like to feel overlooked. If I can make even one kid feel seen, it's worth it." Victor leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "How do you do it? Stay so grounded?" Livia met his gaze, her expression thoughtful. "I focus on what matters. I've learned that happiness doesn't come from having more. It comes from giving more." Her words struck Victor like a chord, resonating in the quiet spaces of his mind where doubts about his extravagant life had lingered. "I've spent so much time chasing things, success, money, recognition," he admitted. "But sitting here with you, I'm starting to wonder if I've been chasing the wrong things." Livia arched an eyebrow. "That's a big realization for one dinner." Victor chuckled. "What can I say? You're persuasive." Over the following weeks, Victor found excuses to spend more time at the community center. He helped with fundraisers, carried supplies, and even read to the children. Each visit drew him closer to Livia, who remained as grounded and candid as ever. One evening, as they locked up the center together, Victor turned to her. "Livia, you've changed the way I see things." Livia paused, her hand resting on the doorframe. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Victor said, hesitating for a moment, "you've shown me a different kind of wealth. One that doesn't come from a bank account." Livia's lips curled into a soft smile. "That's sweet, Victor. But life isn't a Hallmark movie. People like us, we come from different worlds." "Maybe," Victor said, his tone firm. "But that doesn't mean those worlds can't come together." Their relationship blossomed like a flower cautiously testing the warmth of spring. Livia began to open up, sharing stories about her childhood, her challenges, and her dreams. Victor, in turn, talked about his life before the millions, about the simpler days when ambition didn't overshadow everything else. One evening, as they strolled along a quiet park path, Livia rolling beside Victor, they stopped by a small pond, its surface rippling under the moonlight. "You know," Livia said, her voice low, "I've always believed that people come into our lives for a reason." Victor looked at her, his heart pounding. "And what reason would I have for being here?" "To learn," Livia replied, meeting his gaze. "About yourself, about what matters. Maybe about love." Victor felt a warmth spread through him. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about deals or deadlines. He was thinking about her. "Then I'd say you're teaching me well," he said softly. Livia smiled, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "I hope so, Victor. But love isn't always enough to bridge the gaps between people." Victor knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her hand gently. "Then we'll build a bridge, together." As the moonlight bathed them in silver, Livia allowed herself to believe, just for a moment, that maybe their worlds could truly unite. Victor and Livia's growing bond was undeniable, but as their relationship deepened, the stark differences between their worlds became increasingly apparent. The societal expectations surrounding Victor, a wealthy and influential millionaire, clashed with the simplicity and grounded life that defined Livia. The shift began subtly. Victor invited Livia to a gala, a lavish event filled with crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, and guests dressed in designer gowns. He had insisted she join him, eager to introduce her to his circle. Livia, though hesitant, agreed. That evening, Livia arrived in a modest navy dress, her hair swept into an elegant bun. Victor greeted her at the door, his smile genuine as he leaned down to kiss her cheek. You look beautiful, he said softly. Thank you, Livia replied, her smile faint. She couldn't shake the nervous flutter in her stomach. As they entered the grand ballroom, the hum of conversation momentarily quieted. Heads turned, and Livia felt the weight of countless eyes on her. She rolled forward, keeping her posture straight, but the whispers were impossible to ignore. Is that Victor's date? Why is she in a wheelchair? She doesn't belong here. Victor noticed the shift in the atmosphere and placed a reassuring hand on Livia's shoulder. Don't mind them, he murmured. They don't know you like I do. But Livia couldn't help but feel out of place. The glittering surroundings seemed to emphasize her difference, making her painfully aware that she didn't fit into this world. Later in the evening, Victor introduced Livia to a group of his friends. They smiled politely, their greetings courteous but distant. One woman, dressed in an emerald gown that shimmered under the lights, leaned closer to Victor and said in a voice just loud enough for Livia to hear, "She's different, isn't she?" Victor stiffened, his jaw tightening. "Livia's incredible," he replied firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. The woman arched a perfectly sculpted brow but said nothing more. Livia, however, felt the sting of the comment like a slap. She excused herself soon after, retreating to a quieter corner of the room. Victor found her there a few minutes later. "Livia, are you okay?" She looked up at him, her expression guarded. "This isn't my world, Victor. I don't belong here." "You belong with me," Victor said earnestly, kneeling beside her. "That's all that matters." Livia sighed, her fingers gripping the edge of her wheelchair. "But it's not just about us, is it? Your friends, your world, they see me as an outsider. And maybe they're right." Victor shook his head. "No, they're wrong. I don't care what they think. I care about you." His words were sincere, but Livia couldn't ignore the growing doubt in her heart. She wasn't sure if love alone could withstand the weight of societal expectations. The tension between their worlds came to a head a few weeks later. Victor hosted a dinner party at his penthouse, inviting a mix of colleagues and friends. Livia, despite her reservations, attended to support him. The evening was pleasant at first, with laughter and clinking glasses filling the room. But as the night wore on, Livia overheard a conversation that shattered her composure. "She's sweet," one man said, his tone dripping with condescension. "But do you really see Victor settling down with someone like her?" Another voice chimed in. "She's a charity case. He'll get bored eventually." Livia froze, her chest tightening as the words sank in. She felt exposed, like an imposter in a world that would never accept her. Unable to bear it, she slipped out onto the balcony, the cool night air a welcome relief. She stared out at the city lights, her mind racing. Victor found her there moments later, his brow furrowed in concern. "Livia, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice gentle. She turned to him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Victor, I can't do this." "Do what?" he asked, his voice tinged with panic. "This," Livia said, gesturing toward the party inside. "Your world, your friends, the whispers and judgments. I don't belong here, and I don't want to keep pretending I do." Victor reached for her hand, his grip firm. "You don't have to prove anything to them, Livia. You belong with me, not them." "But being with you means being part of this world," Livia said, her voice breaking. "And I'm not sure I can handle that." Victor's heart ached at her words, but he refused to let go. "Livia, I don't care about their opinions. I love you." Livia pulled her hand away, her tears spilling over. "Maybe you don't care, but I do. I can't be the reason you're constantly defending yourself. You deserve someone who fits into your life, and I deserve a life where I'm not always feeling like I'm not enough." Before Victor could respond, Livia wheeled past him and out of the penthouse, leaving him standing alone on the balcony. The city lights blurred in his vision as he grappled with the realization that love might not be enough to bridge the gap between their worlds. The following days were a blur for both of them. Victor buried himself in work, but his thoughts were consumed by Livia. He replayed their conversations, questioning what he could have done differently. Livia, meanwhile, returned to her routines at the community center, trying to convince herself that walking away was the right choice. Yet, despite their separation, neither could shake the sense of loss. The love they had shared was real, but so were the challenges they faced. Livia wondered if she had been too quick to let go, while Victor wrestled with the idea of proving to her, and to himself, that their love was worth fighting for. Unbeknownst to them, their journey was far from over. The challenges they faced had only begun to test the strength of their bond and the depth of their commitment to one another. Victor sat alone in his office, the city skyline stretching endlessly before him. The usual satisfaction he felt from closing deals and expanding his empire was gone. His mind kept circling back to Livia, to her words, her tears, and the emptiness he felt since she had left. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was an unknown number. Reluctantly, he answered. Victor Carter speaking. The voice on the other end was cold and familiar. Victor, it's Mark. Remember me? Victor's jaw tightened. Mark was a former business associate he had cut ties with years ago. What do you want? Mark chuckled darkly. I know about that little incident with your former assistant. The one you fired without a second thought. What would Livia think if she found out? Victor's stomach twisted. He knew exactly what Mark was referring to. Years ago, early in his career, he had fired a disabled assistant for not being efficient enough. At the time, he was ruthless and focused solely on results. He had buried the memory, ashamed of the man he had been. You're bluffing, Victor said, his voice steely. Am I? Let's find out. Unless you want this little piece of history going public, we should talk. Victor knew he had no choice but to confront the situation head-on. That evening, he invited Livia to his penthouse, his heart pounding as he waited for her to arrive. When she wheeled through the door, her expression was guarded. Victor, why did you call me? Livia asked, her voice calm but distant. There's something you need to know, Victor began, gesturing for her to sit with him. Something from my past. Livia's eyes narrowed, but she remained silent, waiting. Victor took a deep breath. Years ago, I fired an assistant. She was disabled. I told myself it was about her performance, but the truth is, I was impatient, and I didn't see her value. It was wrong, and I regret it deeply. Livia's face fell, her disappointment evident. You, of all people, should have understood how much harder she had to work just to be there. I know, Victor said, his voice thick with remorse. I was arrogant and thoughtless back then. I can't change what I did, but I want to make it right. Livia looked at him, her expression a mix of hurt and disbelief. Victor, you're asking me to believe you've changed. But how do I know this isn't just damage control? Victor leaned forward, his eyes pleading. Because of you, Livia. You've shown me what it means to truly see people for who they are, not their circumstances. I don't want to be that man anymore. Livia studied him, her emotions warring within her. Finally, she nodded. Then show me. Prove it. Victor wasted no time. The next day, he reached out to the former assistant, Maria, and asked to meet. They sat in a quiet cafe, Victor uncharacteristically nervous as he faced her. Maria, he began, his voice steady but sincere, I owe you an apology. What I did to you was wrong. I was selfish, and I didn't consider the challenges you faced or the effort you put in. Maria, a poised woman with sharp eyes, listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, it took you long enough to realize that. But I can see you mean it. I do, Victor said earnestly. And I want to do more than apologize. I've started donating to organizations that support disabled workers, and I'd like to support any causes you're involved in. Maria nodded slowly. Actions speak louder than words, Victor. If you're serious about this, then I'll believe you. Over the following weeks, Victor threw himself into advocacy work, partnering with nonprofits to create scholarships and training programs for people with disabilities. He worked quietly but diligently, avoiding publicity to ensure his motives weren't questioned. Livia watched from a distance, hesitant to let herself believe he had truly changed. But the more she saw, the more her defenses began to crumble. One evening, Victor visited the community center where Livia worked. He didn't announce his arrival. Instead, he quietly joined the staff, helping organize supplies and playing with the children. When Livia noticed him, her heart softened. He wasn't there for recognition, he was there because he genuinely cared. After the children had left for the day, Livia approached him. "You've been busy," she said, her tone lighter than before. Victor looked up, surprised but pleased to see her. "I'm just trying to make things right." "You've made a good start," Livia admitted, her voice tinged with warmth. "But this isn't just about me forgiving you. It's about you forgiving yourself." Victor nodded, her words resonating deeply. "I'm trying, Livia. I really am." She placed a hand on his arm. "I see that. And I'm proud of you." That night, as they walked out of the center together, Victor turned to Livia. "I know I've made mistakes, but I want to build a future with you, a real one, where we face everything together." Livia smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I want that too. But, Victor, you have to promise me something." "Anything," he said without hesitation. "Never stop trying to be better," she said simply. Victor took her hand, his grip firm and steady. "I promise." For the first time in months, Victor and Livia felt a sense of hope. Their journey wasn't over, and there were still challenges ahead. But together, they were stronger, ready to face whatever came next. Victor and Livia's reconciliation marked a new chapter in their lives. The journey they had traveled, filled with mistakes, heartbreak, and growth, had strengthened their bond and clarified their priorities. But as they moved forward together, there was one more obstacle they needed to face: the whispers of Victor's past that threatened to overshadow their future. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Victor's penthouse as he stood before a row of cameras and reporters. A press conference had been called, and the room was filled with murmurs about the nature of Victor's announcement. Dressed in a simple gray suit, Victor looked composed, though a hint of nervousness flickered in his eyes. Livia sat in the front row, her presence steady and supportive. She had encouraged him to take this step, knowing it was necessary not just for their relationship but for Victor's journey of redemption. Victor cleared his throat and began. "Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Today, I want to address a part of my past that I am not proud of." The room fell silent as he continued, his voice steady. "Years ago, I made a mistake. I treated an employee unfairly, someone who deserved better. I dismissed her without truly understanding her value or the challenges she faced. It was an act of ignorance, and I have carried the weight of that decision ever since." He paused, glancing at Livia, whose eyes encouraged him to continue. "I'm not here to make excuses," Victor said firmly. "I'm here to take responsibility. That experience taught me the importance of empathy, of seeing people for who they are, not their circumstances. And it inspired me to make a change, not just in my personal life, but in the way I approach my work and the world." Victor outlined the initiatives he had undertaken: scholarships for people with disabilities, workplace training programs, and a new foundation dedicated to creating opportunities for marginalized communities. As he spoke, the sincerity in his voice silenced even the harshest skeptics in the room. "I know words alone cannot erase the past," Victor concluded. "But I hope my actions can contribute to a better future, not just for me, but for everyone I've wronged." The response was immediate. Though some critics remained skeptical, the majority of the public admired Victor's honesty and efforts to make amends. Social media buzzed with praise for his transparency, and the story of his transformation inspired others to reflect on their own biases and actions. Livia couldn't have been prouder. As they left the press conference together, hand in hand, she turned to him and said, "That was brave, Victor." "It's because of you," he replied, his voice filled with gratitude. "You showed me what it means to be better." A few weeks later, Victor planned a surprise for Livia. He brought her to the community center where they had spent so much time together. The children had decorated the space with handmade banners and flowers, their excited giggles filling the air. "What's all this?" Livia asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Victor knelt before her, a small velvet box in his hand. "Livia, you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've taught me about love, compassion, and what truly matters. I can't imagine my future without you in it." Tears welled in Livia's eyes as he opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" The room erupted in cheers as Livia nodded, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Victor. 1,000 times yes." Their wedding was a small, intimate affair held in the garden of the community center. Surrounded by close friends, family, and the children they had grown to love, Victor and Livia promised to stand by each other through every challenge life would bring. Livia wore a flowing ivory dress, her hair adorned with delicate flowers. As she rolled down the aisle, Victor met her with a gaze full of love and admiration. When they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. "You've taught me what it means to truly live," Victor said, slipping the ring onto her finger. "And I will spend the rest of my life proving that I deserve your love." "You've shown me that people can change," Livia replied, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "And I promise to walk, or roll, beside you, no matter where life takes us." In the years that followed, Victor and Livia became a symbol of resilience and love. Together, they expanded Victor's foundation, working tirelessly to create a more inclusive and compassionate world. Their partnership was a perfect balance. Victor's business acumen complemented Livia's passion for advocacy. The community center grew, offering new programs and resources for families and children. Victor and Livia spent countless hours there, their laughter echoing through the halls as they worked side by side. At home, their life was filled with warmth and simplicity. They spent quiet evenings cooking together, laughing over old stories, and dreaming about the future. The mansion, once a symbol of wealth and emptiness, became a place of love and purpose. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Victor turned to Livia. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" "All the time," Livia said with a smile. "And I wouldn't change a thing." Victor took her hand, his heart full. "You've given me more than I ever thought possible, Livia. You've shown me what it means to truly live. And you've shown me that love can overcome anything," she replied, leaning her head against his shoulder. As the sun dipped below the horizon, their journey together felt like it was just beginning, a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and the belief that even the most flawed among us can find redemption. The story of Victor and Livia is a powerful reminder that love is not about perfection but about growth, understanding, and the courage to face our flaws. It teaches us that redemption is always possible, and true happiness comes from connection and purpose, not material wealth. What do you think about Victor and Livia's journey? Have you ever experienced a love that challenged you to grow? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more tales of love, resilience, and hope. Together, let's celebrate the power of love to transform lives. The story of Victor and Livia reminds us that love is not always easy, but it is always worth fighting for. Their journey highlights the power of love to bridge even the widest gaps, the strength of forgiveness to heal wounds, and the courage it takes to confront our past and become better versions of ourselves. Victor's transformation from a man consumed by wealth and status to someone driven by compassion and purpose proves that anyone can change if they are willing to open their hearts. Livia's unwavering strength and belief in his potential show us the importance of seeing beyond someone's flaws to the goodness within. Together, they built a life that transcended societal barriers, rooted in love, equality, and shared dreams. This story isn't just about romance, it's a testament to the values that make life meaningful, understanding, growth, and a commitment to making the world a better place. It challenges us to ask ourselves, what truly matters in life? How can we learn from our mistakes and choose love, even when it's difficult? What part of Victor and Livia's story touched your heart the most? Have you ever faced challenges in love that helped you grow? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales of resilience, hope, and love. Let's keep spreading messages that remind us of the beauty of transformation and the power of connection. See you in the next story.